What happens when the health of the world's most powerful leader suddenly comes into question? Imagine waking up to headlines that reverberate from Washington to Beijing, Wall Street to Silicon Valley, and from basement boardrooms to everyday households. President Joe Biden, the 82-year-old at the helm of the United States, has just been diagnosed with one of the most aggressive forms of prostate cancer, and the world is watching, anxiously asking, what happens now? Beyond the personal struggle, this diagnosis has ignited a storm of political intrigue, medical debate, and global uncertainty. But is this a turning point for American leadership and global stability, or a test of how far medicine and policy can stretch in the 21st century? Let's dive into the layers behind the headlines, examine what we know and what's at stake when the fate of a nation, and perhaps the world, rests on a single medical report. It's Friday afternoon. The press room is eerily quiet at first, until the statement drops from President Biden's office. Last week, it reads, President Joe Biden was seen for a new finding of a prostate nodule after experiencing increasing urinary symptoms. On Friday, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, characterized by a Gleason score of 9, grade group 5, with metastasis to the bone. This isn't just a routine health scare. In the clinical world, prostate cancer is graded using the Gleason score, a scale that ranges from 2 to 10, representing how abnormal cancer cells appear compared to healthy tissue. A score of 9 places Biden's disease in the highest danger zone. It isn't just aggressive, it's on the offensive, having already spread to his bones. The statement quickly tries to offer reassurance. While this represents a more aggressive form of the disease, the cancer appears to be hormone sensitive, which allows for effective management. The president and his family are reviewing treatment options with his physicians. But for Americans, and for anyone who understands the power structure of the modern world, the diagnosis sets off a series of urgent and uncomfortable questions. How serious is this cancer? Can the 82-year-old president lead through this? What does it mean for U.S. politics, the global economy, and decision-making on the world stage? Will America's adversaries and allies alike alter their moves based on this single sheet of medical data? Waves of public reaction come pouring in. Former President Donald Trump, Biden's contentious rival, puts rivalry aside for a moment. He posts on Truth Social, Melania and I are saddened to hear about Joe Biden's recent medical diagnosis. We extend our warmest and best wishes to Jill and the family, and we wish Joe a fast and successful recovery. From Barack Obama, nobody has done more to find breakthrough treatments for cancer in all its forms than Joe, and I am certain he will fight this challenge with his trademark resolve and grace. We pray for a fast and full recovery. Vice President Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, the UK's Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, Bill Clinton, one after another, they echo support. But under the surface, the machinery of government and the attention of the world are laser-focused on what comes next. For many, there's a surreal feeling, like living through a history book, page by page, as the health of a president becomes more than a personal matter. It's a test of institutions, a test of transparency, and a test of medical science. But before we dive into the high-stakes implications, let's break down what this diagnosis actually means in medical terms and why it matters so much. Prostate cancer is not rare. In fact, it's the second most common cancer among men worldwide. But when experts talk about a Gleason score of 9, they're not talking about a slow-moving, easily managed condition. The higher the score, the more abnormal and dangerous the cancer cells are. The cancer's aggressiveness is measured not only by how the cells look, but also by how quickly it can spread. According to a pivotal study published in November 2023, only about 34% of men with a Gleason score of 9 or 10 were alive at the end of follow-up. Nearly half died from prostate cancer, while another quarter succumbed to unrelated causes. When cancer with this kind of aggressiveness finds its way into the bones, as in Biden's case, the numbers are even more sobering. The median survival rate is between 3 to 5 years, according to the latest research. Let that sink in. The President of the United States, the so-called leader of the free world, now faces a medical battle that statistics say is fatal for most patients within 5 years. Of course, median statistics are not destiny, and no two patients are exactly alike. But these numbers are compelling and chilling. The most important developments in prostate cancer diagnosis and management in the last year are crucial for informing treatment decisions, says Dr. Alan H. Bryce, a leading oncologist. In just the past 12 months, medical science has thrown out a lifeline. Single-port robotic prostatectomies, reducing post-op pain by 30%, and new immunotherapies showing promise even in metastatic cases. Dr. Rahul Agarwal, another prostate cancer specialist, says, Newer drugs, genetic testing, and clearer imaging give patients more options, reduce side effects, and save time. This is a ray of hope, yet the 5-year survival rate for men with distant metastatic prostate cancer is only 28%. That's not just a number, it's a countdown for a man leading a country. Why does this matter beyond Biden's personal fight? Because the world is in an era where the health of a single individual can reshape global stability. Consider this. The United States spends more on healthcare than any other nation, contributes 22% of the World Health Organization's base budget, and is seen as a linchpin of global health security. When its leader is vulnerable, every major power, China, Russia, the EU, watches closely for signs of political or economic instability. And for Americans, the memory of past presidential health crises looms large. Franklin D. Roosevelt hid his paralysis. John F. Kennedy concealed his severe back pain and Addison's disease. Ronald Reagan was diagnosed with Alzheimer's after leaving office. Each time, the public was left guessing, sometimes for decades, about how much these illnesses affected decision-making in the highest office. Today, expectations have shifted. Transparency is no longer a courtesy, it's a necessity. Every press release, every snippet of information is dissected for clues. How much can we trust what is being reported? What are the implications if the president suddenly becomes incapacitated? But the cancer diagnosis is just the beginning. The moment a leader's health faces such a challenge, the gears of power and policy start to turn. In the background, advisors, cabinet members, and world leaders are recalculating strategies. Markets respond, sometimes in subtle ways. Currency values, defense postures, even trade talks can be influenced by the perceived strength or weakness at the top. There's also an emotional undercurrent, one that's deeply human and difficult to quantify. Joe is a fighter. He'll face this challenge with the same resilience and optimism that have always defined his life and leadership, says Kamala Harris. It's a reminder that at the center of all this machinery is a man, a family, and a nation hoping for the best. But hope must be balanced with reality. The leading edge of medical science is moving at breakneck speed, and the next few years could bring game-changing new treatments. For instance, Phase 1 trials in 2024 of T-cell redirectors, a form of immunotherapy, have already shown a 40% response rate in men with metastatic prostate cancer. Genetic testing and personalized medicine are giving patients more targeted, less toxic treatment options. Vitamin-based interventions, like lycopene, selenium, and vitamin E, appear to slow the progression of low-risk prostate cancer by up to 63%, according to researchers at Johns Hopkins. But these advances are still, for most, just out of reach of the most severe cases. From a policy perspective, every administration brings its own philosophy to healthcare. Under Trump, initiatives targeted cost containment and price transparency, with new policies that could have cut employer healthcare costs by up to 27%. Under Biden, massive support was funneled to cancer research, with a focus on accelerating experimental treatments and lowering barriers for patient access. As we stare down the barrel of another presidential election, the question of continuity, policy direction, and healthcare investment has never felt more urgent. Let's not forget the international dimension. The world has seen what happens when American leadership is absent or distracted, whether during a pandemic, a military crisis, or a global recession. Just last year, a prominent research analysis stated bluntly, U.S.-China collaboration is essential for global health security. What happens to that collaboration if there's a sudden vacuum or power shift in Washington? And while the public sends in messages of support, political operatives are busy behind closed doors. Advisors are reviewing the 25th Amendment, preparing contingencies, and whispering about successors, Vice President Harris, potential cabinet appointees, and even what it might mean for the upcoming election cycle. The gears of democracy grind on, whether the world is ready or not. There's a chilling irony in the fact that Biden, who famously championed the Cancer Moonshot Initiative, now finds himself on the patient side of the equation. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton put it poignantly, "I'm thinking of the Bidens as they take on cancer, a disease they've done so much to try to spare other families from." At the same time, the medical world is rapidly evolving. Reporting of Gleason scores, including the precise pattern components, is essential, says Dr. Lars Eggevad. Collapsing the scores into groups entails loss of information. In a sense, every update from Biden's care team is not just a medical bulletin. It's a critical data point for millions of Americans, investors, and political rivals making sense of the nation's direction. All these layers combine to create a moment thick with uncertainty and loaded with consequence. The medical reality is sobering. the policy questions are urgent, and the emotional stakes are sky high. As the cameras flash outside the White House and reporters pepper officials with questions, the machinery of state and the world economy stand on alert. And this brings us to the central conflict. Can medical advances, institutional transparency, and democratic continuity withstand the storm of a suddenly vulnerable president? Or does this diagnosis expose cracks in the system, fears about succession, global power shifts, and the limits of trust in our government's handling of crisis? We are left standing, breath held, as the administration hints at treatment plans, and the world waits for the next update. Will newly approved drugs, cutting-edge robotics, or immunotherapies extend both the quality and quantity of Biden's life, and, by extension, his leadership? Or will the grinding reality of statistics and biology force the world's most powerful office into uncertainty? And so, as the diagnosis echoes around the globe, the question lingers. Is the world prepared for what comes next if America's leadership falters due to health? Or will this crisis become the greatest test and triumph of 21st century medicine and governance? The answer, and the chain reactions it could unleash, may be closer and more explosive than anyone dares to admit. As the world holds its collective breath, the president's diagnosis has triggered a ripple effect, one that extends far beyond the sterile walls of a hospital. The stage is set not just for a battle against a formidable disease, but also for a real-life test of the American system's ability to adapt, communicate transparently, and reassure both its citizens and global partners in the midst of uncertainty. The immediate concern, of course, centers on President Biden's health, the aggressive nature of his cancer, the choices he and his medical team must now confront, and the calculus between personal privacy and public responsibility. But lurking just behind these headlines are bigger questions. How could this ordeal reshape the presidency? Will medical advances keep pace with the demands of leadership at the highest level? And perhaps most compellingly, can American institutions project the stability that the world expects, even when the person at the helm is at his most vulnerable? Let's dive into the possible futures ahead. One scenario hinges on the promise of rapidly advancing medicine. In the last year alone, breakthroughs have changed the treatment landscape for aggressive prostate cancer, making optimism not just wishful thinking, but a possibility grounded in science. With hormone-sensitive cancer, patients like President Biden may benefit from novel therapies that harness the body's immune system to identify and destroy cancer cells. T-cell redirectors, which are currently yielding up to a 40% response rate in early trials for metastatic prostate cancer, could become key weapons in this fight. Dr. Alan H. Bryce, a leading oncologist, recently underscored this point. The most important developments in prostate cancer diagnosis and management in the last year are providing hope. We're seeing options that were unthinkable a short time ago. And as Dr. Rahul Aggarwal puts it, newer drugs, genetic testing, and clearer imaging give patients more options, reduce side effects, and save time. This means Biden may have access to treatments that not only extend survival but improve quality of life, allowing him, at least in theory, to continue fulfilling his duties. Personalized medicine, perhaps involving genetic testing and targeted therapies, could tailor his care in real time. Minimally invasive surgeries, like the single-port robotic prostatectomy, are reducing recovery times and side effects, making the prospect of a sitting president undergoing major treatment less disruptive than it might have been even a decade ago. But the promise of medicine is only one part of the equation. Medical statistics still cast a sobering shadow. For men with cancer as advanced as Biden's, the 5-year survival rate is just 28%. Median survival with standard treatment is 3 to 5 years, and there are no guarantees, even with experimental therapies. The road ahead will almost certainly include difficult side effects, moments of profound fatigue, and the need for flexibility in daily responsibilities. This reality forces the administration and the American public to confront uncomfortable questions about the transfer of power, continuity of command, and the importance of transparency. The U.S. Constitution has robust processes in place for presidential succession, but history has shown that ambiguity, secrecy, or hesitation can shake public confidence. The lessons of President Woodrow Wilson, whose long-concealed stroke led to a governance crisis over a century ago, continue to echo in Washington. Today, the White House faces relentless scrutiny. Every decision, every detail about the president's health is dissected by media, adversaries, and allies alike. Calls for radical transparency are louder than ever. As political figures across the spectrum rally around Biden, Donald Trump posting a rare message of unity, Barack Obama, Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton, and even world leaders like Sir Keir Starmer expressing support. The rhetoric is clear. This is a moment that transcends partisanship. But make no mistake, the stakes are political as much as they are personal. The 2024 presidential election looms, and the health of the sitting president is already altering strategies, headlines, and public opinion. If Biden responds well to treatment and remains visibly in command, it could galvanize public trust in medical science and reaffirm faith in American resilience. Should his health decline rapidly, the nation, and indeed the world, may witness a historic transfer of power or a dramatic shift in the electoral landscape. The outcome will shape not only American policy, but also global stability. This moment also spotlights the unique role of the United States as a global health leader. With the U.S. contributing 22% to the World Health Organization's base segment and acting as an essential partner in pandemic prevention and cancer research, confidence in American leadership is not simply a domestic issue. Any sign of weakness, indecision, or lack of coordination could have outsized effects internationally, from financial markets to diplomatic negotiations. Yet here, too, there are opportunities. The bipartisan support for cancer research may find new momentum as the president's personal journey puts a human face on a disease that claims thousands of lives each year. The so-called Cancer Moonshot Initiative, a hallmark of Biden's policy legacy, could receive an unprecedented boost, with both public and private sectors uniting for faster clinical trials, improved access to experimental therapies, and a renewed push for price transparency in healthcare. A recent report estimates that transparency could reduce employer healthcare costs by up to 27%, a practical benefit with the power to ripple through the entire economy. There is even talk of broader international collaboration, particularly with China, in global health security. If the U.S. leverages this moment, forging coalitions and sharing breakthroughs, the impact could reach far beyond American borders, informing best practices worldwide. But what about you, our viewer? Why does this story matter beyond the headlines? First, there's a vital personal takeaway. Prostate cancer is the second most common cancer among men, yet early detection still saves lives. Biden's very public battle can serve as a wake-up call for millions. Men over the age of 50, and especially those with a family history or symptoms, are urged to schedule routine screenings. As recent research demonstrates, even when cancer is aggressive, knowing early opens the door to more treatment options and better outcomes. Second, the story reinforces the value of advocacy and education. The president's diagnosis brings rare visibility to a disease that is often shrouded in stigma and silence. For families touched by prostate cancer, seeing leaders at the highest level confronting the same challenges can inspire conversation, support, and action. It can also drive home the importance of preventative health, diet, exercise, and perhaps even supplements like lycopene, selenium, and vitamin E, which were shown in a Johns Hopkins study to slow low-risk prostate cancer progression by over 60%. While these results are not a magic bullet, they serve as a powerful reminder that small lifestyle choices matter. Third, there's a lesson in the necessity of transparency, both at the personal and institutional level. For those navigating illness, clear communication with family, employers, and the people who depend on you is not just a courtesy, it is essential. President Biden's decision to go public with his diagnosis sends a message that honesty, even about our vulnerabilities, can foster trust and resilience. From a broader perspective, the events unfolding in Washington call citizens to pay attention, not just to presidential health, but to the systems in place to safeguard democracy. Are we satisfied with how information is shared? Are there gaps in succession planning at the highest levels, or in our own workplaces and communities? Now is the time to ask these tough questions. And there is a secret the history books rarely tell. It is often in moments of crisis that the greatest leaps in medical progress occur. When Franklin D. Roosevelt's struggle with polio was finally confronted, it transformed both healthcare access and public perceptions of disability. When Reagan was shot, new procedures for presidential recovery and continuity were established. Today, Biden's battle may similarly usher in reforms, from faster clinical trials to more robust safeguards for leadership, and perhaps a new era of patient-centered cancer care. As for the White House, how it manages press briefings, shares medical updates, and maintains the chain of command will set precedents for generations. Experts like Dr. Andrew Leone remind us, reporting of Gleason scores, including the pattern components, is essential. Collapsing scores into broader categories means losing the nuanced information we need. That same commitment to detail and accuracy applies to public communication too. So, as the world waits, the answer to our central question begins to emerge. Yes, medical advances have made it possible for even patients with aggressive forms of cancer to pursue active lives, and sometimes even to lead a nation. Yes, transparency, when it is genuine and timely, can bridge the chasm between private vulnerability and the burden of national leadership. But these are not guarantees. Medical miracles cannot replace decisive institutions, and even the most transparent government can falter when the message rings hollow or incomplete. The true test is not just of medicine or political spin, but of the American system's flexibility and fortitude. If the president's team communicates openly, leverages every tool modern science offers, and makes clear contingency plans, the world will watch an example of resilient democracy in action. If not, if secrecy, confusion, or partisanship prevail, cracks in the system could widen at a dangerous moment. In the months ahead, citizens will not only witness a leader's fight against cancer, they will participate in a national conversation about science, health, responsibility, and trust. And for every viewer, the responsibility and opportunity are clear. Regular checkups, honest conversations, and engagement in the civic process are the foundation for both personal and national resilience. Before we close, here's something few know. The very push for breakthrough cancer treatments in the U.S., from gene therapies to robotic surgery, has been supercharged by presidential involvement behind the scenes. In fact, classified White House briefings in recent years have included updates not just on threats and intelligence, but on the nation's position in the global race for cancer cures. When the leader of the free world is directly affected, the stakes and the speed of innovation can change dramatically. So where does that leave us? We are living through a rare, high-wire moment. Medical science may deliver hope. Transparency can foster trust. But the outcome will depend, as always, on leadership. From the Oval Office to every home where tough health decisions are made every day. Thank you for watching. If you found this analysis valuable, hit the like button, subscribe for more deep dives into health and politics, and share your thoughts or personal experiences in the comments below. Your voice matters, as does your health. Let's keep this vital conversation going. Until next time, take care and stay informed.